Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is a career coach and, of course, an author too, no other than Miss Michelle Schafer.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Michelle. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, I'm a career coach. I specialize in career transition and leadership. And, it's interesting because I didn't always dream of being a coach. I just became a coach. Certainly, it was through a career transition of my own. So I lost my job twice, once from a large national bank here in Canada, and the second with a large national not-for-profit, a cancer charity here in Canada. And, both times they really, shone a spotlight for me on, not just the skills that I had, but the fact that I could transfer those skills to new work. So when I lost my job in when I lost my job in financial services, I went into not-for-profit. And at that time, it was a few years into my employment that a good friend of mine had mentioned to me just out of the blue one day. And she's a coach, this friend of mine. And she said, I never understood why you didn't do this as a career. And at the time, I was really loving my job. I was working with volunteers who all had a connection to the cancer charity and the cancer cause. And I, had successfully negotiated a full-time job and a part-time so I could be at home with my boys when they were younger. But there was something that stuck in my head about that, even though the timing wasn't right at that time. I kind of had a feeling that maybe the timing would be right at some point down the road. And sure enough, when I lost my job at that large national cancer organization, it was like the universe telling me, Daniel, that I should really pursue coaching. And so I started to look into it. I was networking with coaches and finding out, what their specialty was and what kind of school they went to. And I realized during that process, I didn't just want to do this off the corner of my desk. I wanted to do this as a full-time job. So I started my own practice 10 years ago. And it was only this year that I published a book all on my experiences with career transition, and certainly a lot about the clients that I met along the way and how I've been able to help them.
Miss Michelle Schafer, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. And let's talk about cultivating career growth.
Yeah.
The title uses cultivating, implying patience and process. How these fundamentally challenge the common career ladder or leap mentally during transitions.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you honed in on that word, because you're absolutely right, and the image on my book also speaks to the title in that way, because, if you think of planting, seeds in a garden, I think of like planting tomatoes, for example. And, you push the seed in the ground and it looks like nothing's happening for a long time. But under the surface, that seed is sprouting into something. And then soon enough, you see shoots of green like you do on the cover of my book. And that really relates to career transition because, a lot of it is mindset. It really is like, sometimes when we're looking for new work, whether we have been let go and we need to find something quickly, or, maybe we're gainfully employed and we just don't love our work anymore, regardless of that situation, it does require a lot of patience. Being in a job search requires planting seeds with different people, maybe through conversations that you're having, or introductions that are made for you, or even applying for different jobs. And it can appear for a while like nothing is really happening. And it's that, not seeing anything happening, any of that forward movement, that can be very frustrating and discouraging for a job seeker. But one thing to realize is, even though they don't have a job yet, all of their planting of seeds, all of their conversations, applying for jobs, conversations even with recruiters, all of those things individually, each of those are like a seed. And over time, those seeds will sprout. The fruits of your labor will come to be more evident. And it can be really hard to be patient. And yet in a job search, and especially if you're exploring new career paths, patience is really the name of the game. None of these things happen overnight.
Patience is virtue, people. How
Yes,
do
that's
you
right.
help, Miss? How do you help individuals distinguish between a fleeting passion and deeper sustainable purpose when evaluating a career shift, especially when feeling lost?
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned lost, because a number of people, when they come to me and they are interested in learning a little bit more about me and how I can help, oftentimes they're feeling like they don't have a rudder, like they're in a boat and they just don't have any direction. They're feeling quite lost. And, sometimes they're doing some things on their own to advance their career search, and it just doesn't seem to be coming together. So, when I'm speaking to individuals, I start with reflection. So, the first step is not, working on your resume. It's not applying for jobs. The first step in any career exploration is really to take a step back. I call it hit the pause button. In fact, in my book, there's a whole chapter devoted to hitting the pause button, which is really my way of saying, take a step back from the world, take a step back from your career and everything that's happened so far, and reflect on what the three keys of career fulfillment are for you. So I like to think of the three keys as being, doing work that gives you energy. That's certainly one way to contribute to your fulfillment in your career. A second key to fulfillment is working for an organization that I like to say believes the same things that you believe, which means the values are in line. This organization has a mandate you can get behind. They employ leaders that you can do your best work with. And then the third key is all about your non-negotiables or your deal breakers. Like, these are the things, Daniel, that are so deeply important to you, you would walk away from an opportunity if they weren't there. So, this is where, by reflecting on those three keys, a job seeker can, really use that as a way of evaluating whether an opportunity is a good fit for them or not. Like, they can hold up their reflections on those three keys against, the opportunity that they have, and see where's their alignment or where are their disconnects. And it's at this point that the distinguishment can be made between something that is a fleeting passion because it's not sustainable. It doesn't really speak to overall work that gives you energy, for example. So then the aim is to really look at what is really sustainable. And part of that exploration also comes down to, does this opportunity not only give you a chance to do work that energizes you, but does it, include a minimum of work that drains you? And there might be things that you've done over your career that maybe you've been known for, you can do really well, you're quite skilled at, but these things don't give you energy anymore. And so, when you reflect on all those things, you can see, okay, is this career path like something that is, a spur of the moment? I'm excited about this path, but it's not really something I'd want to do longer term. Or is this something that would be sustainable as a career? And, for some individuals who fall into the first category, where, they have an idea, but it's not really something maybe that they want to make their whole work, then, you can look at other ways of being able to do those things. Like, maybe it's volunteering, for example, or it's pursuing some education and taking some classes, developing some skills as a way of contributing to that particular activity or that particular path. So there are other ways. We don't have to fulfill our passions only through our work. There are certainly other ways that we can do that. And so then the bigger question becomes, is what I'm looking at, is what I'm entertaining, is that going to be something I'd like to engage in over the longer haul? Or is this something that, maybe I'd like to do a little bit of, but maybe not make my whole work? So lots of questions to be asked of yourself. You get curious about yourself, but lots of questions to seek answers for as well.
Miss Michelle, very well said.
Thank you.
Beautifully articulated. Your book acknowledges systemic barriers. How does your framework adapt for individuals who cannot afford significant risk, like financial or time during a transition, or ensuring purpose is not a luxury concept?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think you're asking it in a time where in our world right now, there's a lot of career transition. So, certainly in Canada and the US, other places around the world, there's a lot of job loss right now. And, it appears that we're not quite at the end of that line. There probably is going to be more job loss before there's less. And so for individuals who have suddenly lost their job, it wasn't something that they saw coming, it wasn't something that they were prepared for. You're right, like reflecting on your purpose is something that might be, considered at that time a little bit more of a luxury. You might not have time to do that reflection. You got to hit the ground running. You got to update your resume and you've got to start looking for work. So, for those individuals, their steps in their career transition might be a little bit different than somebody who maybe they were given a really big severance, for example, and they have a bit more time, or they see that changes are coming. And so they're already preparing for those changes now. So for somebody who needs to look for work fast, I'd like to encourage them to think about their transition in stages, meaning they don't have to find that perfect job, that job that does really speak to a deeper purpose. They don't have to find that right away. So if financially you need to take a job, it might not be a perfect job, but you need to have something, then I encourage individuals then to look at, financially, certainly, what do you need? What kind of roles are going to give you the compensation that you need right now? But then the second part of the transition is not just staying there. People don't have to feel like they're stuck. Like some people might think, oh, I just took this job. I don't even really like it. And now I'm stuck here forever. Well, the reality is, like, there's like nothing is the forever place, like any point in time is not going to be your forever existence. So you won't be in this job forever, which means, just commit to yourself that you are going to continue looking. So even if you have to take a job that isn't a great fit, you tell yourself, okay, you know what? I'm going to be doing this for, I don't know, like 6 to 8 months. You want to be able to get an income for that period of time, but commit to yourself that you're going to continue looking so that when you find something that is a better fit for you and certainly meets those compensation requirements, you can then leave one job knowing that you have another job to go to. So yeah, sometimes, that transition is not, into a job that you really love right away. Maybe you take a few pivots and shifts before you get there, and that's okay.
Miss Michelle, career transitions often involve loss of title, routine, or professional identity. How does your process help people consciously grieve and release this attachment to embrace the new?
Yeah, that's such an excellent question. And it's so true, like the loss is not just of the job, like the loss is partly of yourself, like especially for some people who have lost a job that maybe they've been doing for a number of years. They've been with this organization for a number of years. I think back to my first job loss, it was with the bank that I was with for 18 years. I mean, that work and that place, like the organization was a part of me. So when there is job loss, there is oftentimes it's accompanied by a loss of identity, wondering, okay, well, how do I define myself now, if I don't have my work to rely on? It's also the loss of Gosh, there's so many losses, really. It was the loss of relationships, like the people that you worked
Yes.
with that, maybe you were close to. You might feel like you don't have access to those anymore. It's a loss of routine. When you go to work every day, there's a routine. Like maybe you have phone calls to make and meetings to attend and reports to write and, all of those different things. Well, when you lose your job, the routine also changes, and the way that we go through our day also changes. So, it's really important, I think, as a first step to acknowledge that there is loss on multiple levels. And, for some individuals who have lost their job, they just need time. And I recommend for people, don't dive into a job search right away. As soon as you experience job loss, like take a beat, like take some time for yourself, do some things that are really important to you, things that feed your soul, as a way of processing this loss. And the one thing I say to people is, one thing not to do, of course, is don't pull yourself up. Don't hide from people that for some people, there's a lot of shame that goes with job loss. They don't want to tell anybody. They feel somehow maybe if they were a better performer, they wouldn't lose their job. Well, I mean, if we look around our world today, hundreds of thousands of people are losing their job. Are you going to tell me that all those people were poor performers? Of course not. Like these are business decisions. So recognize that there is loss. Do what you need to do to have time for yourself, to seek out support. It's a good way to process that. And in my book, I have a whole chapter that is all about navigating the hard emotions. Loss and grief are certainly one of those, because oftentimes people will go through the like similar stages of grief, almost as if you lost a loved one. Now, of course, we can never compare those two, but the stages are quite similar. Like there might be anger at the company. How could they do this to you? You were so loyal to them. There might be denial, like, okay, yeah, this didn't happen. Like they're going to call me back tomorrow and they're going to give me my job back. They're going to recognize that they made a mistake. So there might be some denial. There's certainly sadness that goes with it. Sad that you won't see the people that you really enjoyed working with, sad that you won't get to do a job that maybe you really enjoyed. So, all of those stages are quite similar, like moving right to acceptance. Eventually, you get to a place where you accept what's happened. You recognize that it's not a personal decision. It was a business decision, especially in the case of restructuring. And when you can acknowledge and accept it for what it is, a business decision, it just helps you move along the continuum that much faster. You then start to embrace a job search and start to participate in a job search. But until you process the loss, it's really, really hard to do that. So, even just having frameworks around talking to people about your loss. Like one of the questions I get when somebody loses their job is, what do I say to people? In some cases, maybe you didn't even know really the full reason. So it becomes really hard. And I've had clients who have avoided social gatherings because they didn't want to answer that question about what happened. Why aren't you at your employer anymore? So, I like to talk about, sharing the story of your departure, your leave story in 3 parts, which I find helps people work through some of that grief and loss, because it really articulates that person's value. So like the 3 parts are, why did you leave? Basically the facts around your departure, which could be as simple as my company went through a large scale restructuring and a business decision was made to eliminate my position. There we go. That's the fact. But then what you follow it up with is golden, because what you follow it with immediately next is something that you really loved about your job, or maybe it's a result that you were behind that you're really proud of. And so then you share that next. And that's a really great way to help the listener understand it wasn't a performance decision, but also it helps that person connect to their value, because just because you lose your job, it doesn't mean that all the things that you've done before that they cease to exist just because your job ceases to exist. That's not the case. So, I really believe in helping people reconnect with what they've done that has been really positive and sharing that as part of their leave story, because especially in the context of an interview, now you're actually giving the company a good way of understanding how you can contribute to their challenges and their issues, just simply as a way of telling your leave story. So yeah, there's lots tangled up in that, Daniel. And some clients move through those stages very swiftly, and others, especially if there's a deep sense of loyalty to the organization, thinking, oh, like I gave up vacations for this company, or, like I sacrificed my evenings and worked overtime for this company. How dare they do this to me? When there's that sense of loyalty, it makes it really hard to move through. And that's where, working with a coach can be really helpful to just unpack and process that loss.
Yes, indeed. Let it go, people. Let it go. And very well said, Miss Michelle. Very well said. Beautifully articulated. As a career coach and an author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
That's a good question too. You've got all the great questions today. So on the short term, one thing that is a big priority of mine is being able to support people who are experiencing, grief and loss through job loss immediately, and there is job loss all around. Like even today, I found out two local radio stations in Ottawa, and these are two of my favorites actually. They let go pretty much their whole staff within the
Wow.
last 24 hours. So I want to be able to support those individuals, be available to support people, and certainly that's one of the reasons I wrote my book. I want people to have a roadmap and a plan to navigate these losses and know what to do. So in the short term, that's what I'm doing. I just actually launched an online course, and that is meant to be, I call it Job Search Jumpstart. And it's really meant for these individuals who have experienced loss and need to find work really quickly, because it goes through all of the reflection, putting together a job search plan. How do you update your resume, prepare for interviews, do networking, all of those kind of things. So in the short term, I want to continue to promote my course and make that available to as many people as possible. Over the longer haul, I would like to launch another course. Certainly, I can see there might be a series. My partner thinks I've got another book in me, so maybe that's something on the horizon. You just never know, and really just continuing to get the word out for people that if you've lost your job or you're experiencing looking for a new path, that you are not alone. In fact, looking for work is not meant to be a solo activity. It's really meant to have support and have people around you. So over the longer term, I really want to continue furthering that message and reaching more people with that and being able to support them in their job search. So there certainly, this year has been an exciting year because I launched my book and launched this course, and been definitely love joining you, being a guest on your show and being able to talk about my book and things like that. And I've had to make adjustments to my business in terms of being able to communicate with people in a more efficient way, and everything that goes with building a platform for a course, and all of those things were this year. And I don't know, Daniel, if you approach every new year with a word in mind, kind of like a word of the year. This is something that I've done for the last few years. And my word this year is germinate, because last year there were lots of investments like in my business, in my coaching. And so I see this year is like back to the cover of my book, right? Those green shoots, starting to see the fruits of your labor. And so that's what I'm hoping to experience in 2025 for me.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Michelle. And
Thank you.
likewise, we have the same goals to
Ah,
germinate.
excellent. Lots of synergy, things in common.
Yes, germinate indeed. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be a career coach and an author like you?
Oh, wow. I'd say, just do it. Actually, that's my big advice because, sometimes we can sit on these things and think, "Oh, I can't do that," or it seems like a lofty thing like writing a book. It seems out of your realm of possibility sometimes. And, so I guess my main message is if this is something that you want to explore, I mean, first of all, do your research. I mean, I did my research before I became a coach. I talked to other coaches, I investigated other schools. And certainly before I wrote this book, I was talking to, I landed on the publisher that I wanted to work with, but I did, talk to other people, I even checked their references and, all of those things. So, do your research, gather information, and then you can make decisions from an informed place and, follow that path. If this is something that gives you energy, then do it because life is too short to have regrets. And, as hard as it's been to write a book, or I mean, because it took a whole year, it was not easy to do that. And yet I'm incredibly proud of it. It is, it certainly is a resource now for job seekers where maybe they didn't feel like they had any support or resources. So I'm glad that it can be that for a lot of people. And it's something that it was a learning experience. I learned so much. I developed new skills. Like, I still, it's funny when I heard you introduce me as an author, I still kind of do this checking behind me, like, okay, he's talking about somebody else. Oh, no, he's talking about me. Okay, I'm still accepting it. It's still almost a little bit foreign. It's still pretty new, and yet I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm really glad that I did this, even though it was hard, and I think it just proved to me, I can do uncomfortable things and still be okay. And for anybody else, I'd encourage, actually, if you are thinking of becoming an author and wonder if this is for you, I mean, reach out to me over LinkedIn, email me, like reach out to me over my website, and I'd be happy to have some time with you.
Well, thank you for your advice, Mrs. Michelle, and hoping our listeners and watching right now will follow your success.
Thank
And
you.
before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and of course my book 101 review in its fifth season as well. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in its fifth season too. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, Mental Health 101 and Law 101. Love Letters in third season. Movie 101 review and music 101 in fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Miss Michelle, if someone successfully integrates your principles, what internal transformation should they experience regarding their relationship with work and their ability to navigate future transition with the
Yeah.
work?
I mean, I love the word choice of transformation because, I'm certainly hoping that when individuals read my book that they do experience that transformation. And when I say transformation, it doesn't mean, like a cloud of purple smoke is going to surround you and all of a sudden you're going to emerge as somebody new. It is that shift inside. And, like some of the transformations that I have experienced with clients who I've been working with are, the transformation between hating your job and finding something that you really love and enjoy that really fits for you. So that's one kind of transformation. I mean, the other kind of transformation is that self-awareness, that awareness of really knowing what kind of work energizes you, what is the kind of company you want to work with, and what are those firm deal breakers that would cause you to walk away from an opportunity if they weren't there. That's an internal shift as well. And I see clients experience that, just knowing more, because, some of the clients I've worked with, maybe, like I don't hear from them maybe for a year or 2 years. And then they come back to me because they've lost their job again. Their company has gone through another restructure and they're back looking for work. But the neat thing is that they've learned something because they are more aware. They're able to take those lessons, and it just makes that shift into new work that much shorter because they know so much and they've really picked up on those lessons. So I would hope for anybody reading my book that anyone or maybe several of those transformations are possible. And I think it's like anything, when we're open to learning new things, to trying new approaches, then that kind of change can be possible.
Miss Michelle Schafer, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your book as well as your advocacy to the world?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping that, again, like you can look for me on LinkedIn, you can connect with me and follow me. Certainly consult my website. It's mschafercoaching.ca. You can get a free chapter of my book as well as purchase the whole book. And you can access my online course on the resources tab as well. So lots of great stuff just waiting for you to explore.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Michelle Schafer, because if you support her, more and more and more empowering books to come, more and more and more empowering coaching to come, and for sure, more and more empowering courses to come. So, Miss Michelle, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon.